Well, there we have it. Another Monaco weekend, the one where you can only watch the qualifying and you know the entire race, or at least that would have been the case if the race wasn't an absolute banger. If you just looked at the classification, you could be like, "Oh yeah, just another Monaco race, another Monaco race.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3 is the same as qualifying. Oh, it's the same as always."
Ocon up there, he
but-
must have just been holding everyone up, and
which he
nothing
did a little
else
bit. We'll
going
get
on.
to that. But no, it was. I was speaking to some friends, and it's like genuinely the best Monaco I've seen across the weekend. Like the qualifying was unbelievable, and even coming into the race, I was like, even if the race is typical Monaco, that qualifying was enough to satiate for what for what it was. But then the race sort of even we'll get to it in a bit, but even before the rain came, there was still it was still interesting enough to sort of follow.
Yes.
There was still a little bit of strategy going on, a little bit of back and forth, and then obviously the rain came and sort of threw everyone through a loop and just made it a bit of a worldie of a weekend. So for from last year, Monaco nearly being completely off the calendar and being like, oh no, people, we don't like the race, and oh no, we don't really need Monaco and all this, and everyone's like, after this weekend, they're just like, well, is it? It's not that bad, is it? It's not a bad weekend.
It's not a bad weekend when everyone's close together. When you do have a
Yes.
dominating team where you kind of know what's going to happen, then unless you get a wild curveball, which, I mean, look, for how bad Monaco could be, there's generally some sort of curveball which ends up being either a strategy blunder or, a pit issue or a wheel nut stuck on, something like that, which can change it up a little bit. Sadly, that sometimes happens to maybe the underdog, so it hasn't worked out in the favor of those, like what was like for Bottas and for Ricciardo and such, of course. Or in the case of Ferrari, kind of having a bit of a blunder as well, kind of caused a few conversation points from last year. But yeah, I mean, heading into this one, we all knew eyes were going to be on quali. Practice, everyone seemed to be kind of all over the place, whether you had,
weird.
A car that you hadn't changed, a car that you changed a lot on. It's not like it was, there wasn't any kind of weird weather at that point or anything else going on. Just everyone seemed to really be struggling and all over the shop, so it kind of went a bit, although we can see some drivers are hot here and there, going into quali as we hoped, it's like, what's going to happen?
Yep.
What's going on here? Who's even going to make it out of Q1, Q2, Q3? I don't know. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was like you say, watching the practice sessions was super intriguing because it looked like, Max wasn't there at first, like for a little while, and this does happen a lot, but he was not he was not happy with the car, and there were a lot of drivers and teams that were more comfortable than him a lot more quickly than he in the Red Bull, and you were going into that thinking, it is still practice, so there's still that little bit of hope, like, oh, maybe it is a little bit closer than we've seen in the past or seen in past races. It still turned out to be the case with that. We'll come to qualifying and the Q3 that could have been, but yeah, it was very, very interesting to watch. One of the things I wanted to touch on really quickly is the from practice to qualifying is particularly Alpine and Ocon, where in practice they were sort of where you expect them, like at a track like this. They've always relied a lot on their top end speed. And I know, even saying in my preview, I was not entirely sure where I thought they would be, because I thought it was a lot of, they were similar to Williams in the respect that it's a lot of they're more down to the power rather than the the acceleration and the handling and that side that side of things. But they've got a hooked up car here, as they showed in qualifying, but it was very unassuming in practice, and it felt like it came out of nowhere, but they just ran whatever they needed to. They were both very comfortable. Ocon obviously particularly so to get a Q3 in the Alpine around some very competitive drivers, also strong in the Ferraris, the Astons, the Red Bulls, to a lesser extent the Mercedes. I think they were still struggling with bringing all their upgrades, still trying to find the right balance, but yeah, it was a hell of a lap to put together, and then to bring it home and get that podium as well is a big fuck you to the bosses who basically criticized them not a week or two ago.
I know they were saying that, and let's be real again, this isn't a standard track, right?
Yeah.
But you wouldn't say he really lucked into it. I mean, as we said in our preview, and as we suspected, because everyone seemed fairly close, and even the gap from the top to the lower midfield, you could theorize might not be that big here. And we thought that might mean that, hey, if a driver hooks it together and they get their car in order and the mechanics get something that they like, then we could see a few, people really shine here. And that's what we got, right? Even heading into quali, it was kind of all over the place. There seemed to be like both drivers finding that they could really push the limits a lot more than they thought, and that the track was progressing. Meant that there was times all over the shop from all cars. Sometimes the Red Bulls and that would go out early instead of time, but then that was immediately pipped by like Haas's and all that. You went, what the hell's going,
Haas and Alpha Tauris and Alpha Romeos and teams you just would not expect to be up there. Like even at the end of Q1, it was really, really weird seeing Yuki P2 at the end of Q1. You're like, that's not. I don't. I mean, to be fair, that AlphaTauri was a lot stronger this weekend, but you see that, and I even went back through the last few years. Like, when was the last time, even in a Q1 or a Q2, do you see a team that is arguably like one of the two slowest teams, up in like a P2 in Q1s? Like, you don't see it. Not at, like you just don't see
under standard, non-changing, non-interrupted conditions, right?
Yes, on pure pace, I think is Q1. Obviously, there's a little more nuance than that, but you just don't really see it. And I think that was testament to just how close, like you say, that midfield was and how on it you had to be. Because if you did make a small mistake, there were 3, 4, 5, 6 drivers that they'll take a 10th, and there you go. You're starting back at the pack instead of towards the front. So super, super exciting in terms of a qualifying aspect. But is there any more you want?
Different strengths. I was going to say different strengths of different drivers as well. And this is essentially what led to really the hype towards the end of qualifying, because we started to see a bit of the trend where Max would be like green but not purple in like sector 2 in particular, and then his sector 3 he'd always be purple even if the start of his light was poor, which kind of built a bit of a story going. He's obviously got some confidence in that last sector, and that's, if you see the onboard, that's really where you can push and make some time up. And I guess I'll touch on that in a little bit, but that was really where we saw Ocon and others shine, was sometimes in that first sector, in that kind of middle sector, the slower one, where you can think maybe you can come up with some secret thing, or your car, at super low speeds might do something tricky, or the drivetrain might work in a certain way where you can pick something up.
More power, like the acceleration, with things like that out of those corners.
100%. And that's where we saw people like Yuki that were quite strong, and others even in strong cars like Stroll that just seemed to kind of struggle, and of course Checo that just made a really, really dumb error despite being quite consistent here. So it was really all over the place. A few guys touching, scraping barriers. One thing which also went into the race was it seems that they built the cars strong this year. There was half a dozen cars you thought from contact that should have retired, but they didn't.
It felt like Formula E a little bit, like a bit of bumping and barging. And it was,
with how strong those cars are, 100%.
Yep.
So, I mean, we saw a few things like the Alpha and the Haas just looked like a real kind of handful and not that with it, but everyone else, you'd argue, could have even been in contention. Even Albon at times seemed pretty hot, even though we thought that car might be a bit iffy, but everyone else was really...
you never
yes, it is. It still keeps going. And it was that final lap where we saw that, I think Ocon went through first of kind of the 3 or 4 contenders really had. I guess there was, the 2 Ferraris, the Alpine of Ocon, Alonso, and Verstappen we were kind of looking at. And I just remember Ocon's first few sectors looking really strong, and then Alonso kind of pipped those and just had a good last sector. And then it was Max that we were kind of following towards the end. He was kind of half a lap behind everyone else. And we saw his sector 1, which was yellow, and we went, "Oh, this is interesting." And his sector 2 was like
2 tenths down. I actually was like
0.25 or 2.8 or something.
I was like watching the TV, and I'm just sitting there as I'm watching him through and seeing through sector 2. I'm just like, "Oh my god, he's 2 tenths down." Oh my god,
it was like 2.5. It was like not even close to 2, and it was like, "What's he gonna do?"
Yeah.
And you saw him go through, and you saw him kind of sliding around, and even on the straight, I saw him where he kind of looked like he bumped the wall. I went, "Oh, has he stuffed it?" And then he came across and he gets it by a fair margin. And even on the radio, he's like, "Oh my god, I hit the wall." And his engineer's like, who cares? You did it. And it's like, oh my god. And I saw some screenshots someone put up of his lap versus Alonso's.
Yes.
And it showed when he was turning in or exiting, and every corner you can see Alonso's, there's a little gap. Max, there's nothing.
No.
He's basically
Right
touching the wall.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like at every corner he did that. And you just go like, that. This is the Max factor. This is when we see him really push. Like, yes, he's had some kind of easy, chances to do things here and there. As we'll get into, maybe his race wasn't cleanest, but I don't think anyone's race was clean, so you can't blame him there. But in this raw quali, when we want to see someone up against the wall like he was, over 2/10 down, and you just see that, and literally riding the wall on the straight, like as close as he could to touch it to not lose that time.
Yeah.
Like, bravo, like the Max factor, that's the Schumacher factor, that's the Hamilton factor. That was it, right? We got to see a perfect example, and it was even Alonso and Leclerc, who I guess qualified P3, and Ocon were all like, that was amazing, but Max was just, it was skill. It wasn't car, 100% skill, 1000% he had to do it. So that was thrilling. I mean,
so
getting
good.
chuffed about it,
I know,
reminiscing on it.
No, there's some people that are, upset, like, oh, Max still dominating everything, and it's like, bro, did you even watch it? Like,
it's not the story for once, no way.
He had to work his ass off for that pole, and it is, like, to be honest, probably the most excited I'll be to see a Max pole this year.
Yes.
Because it was so thrilling and exhilarating to be watching that, and Monaco can give you that at least on the Saturdays. So I guess Leclerc probably missed out on a bit of an opportunity getting that 3-place grid drop. The Leclerc curse continues. It's
the Leclerc curse, but it was totally his and his engineer's fault. They were apparently yapping about Max's lap, and then Norris is steaming up, and he's like, "Oh, there's someone there." So, yes,
something about it, but something about Monaco, something about his hometown that just doesn't like I was saying. There was Arthur Leclerc had a big off going into the wall during qualifying as well, and in F2, and the Leclerc name is cursed in Monaco. I'm convinced of it until Leclerc wins or has some kind of weekend in
wins
Monaco.
Or changes his nationality.
Yeah. Or just even has a weekend without something going wrong in Monaco. Is their curse. They're a cursed family.
Yep.
But I don't know that Ferrari really had the pace of like the Aston or the Red Bull. We couldn't really see because both of them were sort of stuck in trains. Mainly that Ocon train at the start. It was Max. Let's move on to the race, I guess. I'm just going to segue into it unless you had anything else you want to talk about.
Well, before we even get on with the race, I think one, like we start the race, we're all talking about T1, what can you do? Alonso's obviously like, I'm going to do what I can, but really, mate, what other than that, we just got to see how it pans out. I will say leading up to the weekend and even after quali, people said, oh, there's a very slight chance of rain, but we've always had slight chances of rain. It comes too late, which was also a theme in the race, which we'll get into. But the first thing we saw is that everyone took their tire blankets off, and you looked at the totem pole for the tires. You went, hold on a second. You're like, everyone's done something different here. And you went, oh, this is interesting, because if everyone goes on the same strategy at Monaco, well, then you're all in a train. There's maybe one instance where you can try undercut, but you think Max is going to be strong. We don't really know what's going to happen. And then you saw Max and Alonso on different tires. You went, okay, even if this patters out, kind of whatever, this is something here. There's something to talk about here. So I think that already in the formation lap was like getting a bit giddy.
You were probably more optimistic than me, because the second I saw Alonso on hard tires, I'm just like, I think that's a wasted opportunity. They know that Max and the Red Bull has struggled off the line. They know that Alonso and Aston has been exceptionally strong off the line. They know how important track position is in Monaco, yet they decided to go a different strategy and put him on the hard and sacrifice that to maybe pay dividends in later in the race, which if things had gone slightly different would have paid dividends.
Well, as it was
but,
trending,
yeah,
it did kind of look like that. I mean, we can get into it at the top at least.
Yeah.
Max did extend a bit of a lead.
Mhm.
It almost seemed to ebb and flow a bit. It was interesting because Max was consistently pulling out a bit of a lead, as you might expect.
Well, even
being
then,
the
like
better tyre.
like for the first sort of even 10 laps, like you look at Alonso's pace on the hard tires, and it was only like 2.5 seconds up the road. Max was like in that first period, and you're like, he's got a lot of pace on that hard tire compared to Max's medium. Like he's not running away from him. Eventually he did start to pull away. So whether he was doing some tire saving early on or sort of
there
playing
seemed
the
to be a
long
few
game,
mistakes in that crept in from both of them as well,
Mm.
which was a common theme that up and down the grid, people even in the dry were finding it a little tricky here and there. But I guess what we saw then pretty quickly was a lot of the midfield runners on the mediums, and this almost calls back to the last few races we've had, where it's kind of a one-stop medium to hard. The medium's quick, but really it runs out very quickly, while the hard is durable, but you're not going to get much pace out of it. And then, of course, because there was the mix of drivers, and although Ocon was following a bit of a train, Max still get enough of a gap where Max was saying, these tires are stuffed, I'm on the ragged edge here, I'm really struggling. We saw him sliding around a lot. Even if he could get some pace, it was clear that he was, struggling, but he couldn't box because he knew he'd been in a train behind some hard runners for 10, 15 laps.
Yep.
It's over. Alonso goes super long. He then boxes. He's going to get ahead of it with the other. You just go. He's got it. And that's what we were kind of tracking. And he was slowly pulling out a bit of a gap. But then it was, and then I guess what made it trickier was when almost everyone was confirming what their strategy was. Their engineers were going, "Hey, we're going to box now," but
There's
10, 15
rain,
minutes, yes.
It was like,
but no one seemed to know.
Nah.
It's the beauty of weather, where everyone has radars, everyone has, the ability to try and track things, but the reality is science isn't perfect. We know exactly what the weather's going to do. Even it started to rain, I think it was like behind the track, and I think it was Ted was just like, oh, if you look behind you, it's raining, but we expect it's going to stay there. There's nothing to say it's going to move towards the track. And then one lap later, we were on board. It's like, oh, it's raining halfway around the track. And you went, what? What do you mean? And then all the drivers are like, water? And we're like, And the engineers are like, it's okay. It's just a little bit, and then it will die down.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, you can go through if you want from here, because it just
I mean, I was, like, anytime they were talking about rain, I remember when Ted was bringing up, oh, there's rain clouds. I'm just sitting there like, shut up.
Yeah,
every time
sure, it's a bit cold.
But it's not going to rain.
Don't
like
tease us.
every single time, like it felt like, we heard team radios of like, oh, there's going to be rain in 10 to 15 minutes, and I feel like we heard that for over a 45-minute period. Where it's like, oh, there's going to be rain
lap 60 or lap 70 or
lap
something.
30, lap 35, and then lap 38 comes around and someone's on the team radio saying, yeah, some light rain, 10 to 15 minutes. It's like, bro, it's supposed to be raining already. There's not going to rain. Like, stop saying it's going to rain. It's not going to rain.
And even like, it'll be a bit of a spatter, nothing to worry about,
And then like when, I think it was Russell's radio where he came on the radio saying, yeah, some light spots of rain. I'm like, that's already more than I expected. But sort of stayed like that for a few laps. And then, as you said, it just got quite a bit heavier. But so at the time, localized to one part of the track. So it's like, well, you can't really come in for inters if it's localized there. If it goes away, then you're going to be stuck on these inters. They're just going to overheat and you're going to have no grip and you're just going to go way too slow. So if you could, what they were saying, tiptoe through that section and then get the tires back up to temperature.
You drive for the rest. And it was amazing because unlike the second or third lap of this, when you were on board, you saw them racing around at the speed of sound, and they would get there and they would just crawl, like literally trying so hard not to lock. Almost trying to pass each other as well and do a few things. And then you just went, well, the engineers are kind of like, but we think it's just going to stay there. It's not going to get worse. And this is when a few drivers were trying to stop anyway. So it was like, what do you do? If you have to stop, do you just wait it out a few more laps? But a common theme as well when it's wet is if you're on really, really worn dry tires when it's wet, it's really bad. The tire does not perform well at all. If you have a new slick and it's kind of hot, at least that kind of flat flash surface, if you like, the not worn surface, as long as you don't aquaplane, is still kind of the best to get contact. Otherwise, if it's all grainy and rubble, you're only getting partial contact, and it's a lost cause, right?
Which was very interesting for Max because he was on those worn medium tires, and it was lap
super
45,
worn, so he was having probably the hardest time of anyone. And we started to see a few people banging into the walls, banging into the barriers. We saw Max have quite a whack into the wall, and you think got quite lucky considering. And then of course everyone started to box from the back, from the midfield. And it was really interesting. What I think was a really hard strategy call was to say, they said, if it just stays raining in that area, you put on a brand new hot set of tires, and you may be able to make it through there, rather than boxing for an intermediate, which is going to be slow everywhere. You're probably going to shred it. It's not going to last to the end of the race, where you could make, like a fresh medium if you started on the hards, last towards the end. And we saw Alonso come in a lap before Max.
I thought he was coming in for inters. I genuinely
the call was, what tires are you going to use? And I said to myself, I think dries are right. And he put on the dries, and even Ted over the thing said, I think dries is right here. I think it's right. So it's not like they went on to dries, and you might have gone, what a strategy blunder, bloody idiot, right? Even I went, no, I think that's correct. And then within half a lap, the monsoon comes down, and you go, oh, fuck, that's not right at all.
No,
that's not right at all.
No.
And it was a shame, because if you looked at the window...
I was looking very closely at it. It was about 19 seconds after his second pit stop that he was behind Max.
Yes, he had to stop again, and he was about where if he had have just put the inters on, and that was the right lap to do it. Max was out a lap even later, which is why he lost so much time as well. In that then, the second box, and then he came out, and he was within a pit distance, but it wasn't enough, and then it was...
like I said...
So he came in the right lap, they did it, but as I say, some people will say he should just put on the wets, but I think I still would have made that call as well to go with the dries. It's just that suddenly it shifted over the rest of the track, and then
hindsight's 2020, isn't it? Like people like armchair experts could always look at it and be like, oh, he should have gone on to the... Of course he should have gone to the
take the
like,
safe strat. Okay, whatever. It's like no.
You make that decision then. You tell Alonso that we're going on to the intermediates, and we know this is the right decision before that happens, and then find out it stops raining, and then he gets P5 because everyone else has gone on to, onto the, like...
Or he looks at that and gone,
So I know that Alonso did apparently question it over the radio as well, but it was exactly the right lap to be a knife edge call. Unfortunately, it just went the wrong way for him. But I think, like you said, when he pitted that second time, it was he came out about 19 seconds behind. The pit window is about 20-21 seconds in Monaco. And like you said, if he had put on the inters, that's the lap that it started to absolutely piss down.
Just the perfect
Max
lap to do it.
Absolutely lost, let's say 8-10 seconds on that lap. He would have been, nearly 10 seconds ahead of Max had he put on those inters. Then Max would have had to come in.
Because he probably would have been lapping quicker than he did anyway on those fresh mediums. So
yeah, for sure. So I know there was a few drivers that went onto the wets. I think mainly Perez went onto the wets to test whether or not it was fast enough for Max.
We can talk about the struggles of Perez, and let's be honest, there's a few other calamities that went on there which we'll touch on. I guess we're following the lead battle, and then we'll cover everything else.
I'll let you cover that if you want to.
Yes, with pleasure.
I do
love my fallen hero in midfield calamity.
Once that those pit stops eventually happened, at least the battle out in front sort of did. It petered out a little bit, but it was still treacherous conditions, so they still had to be very careful and not, like I know even when the rain started coming, you saw all the people sliding off on the slick tires, and then you see another thing, people are sliding off, like he's got the intermediate tires on, and he's still sliding off the track, so it's still not easy conditions to drive in. But from there it was Max did get his, let's say, relatively comfortable victory, but not without some drama in the process. So, but fair play to Red Bull. They and Max for that matter. Max stretching those medium tires as long as he did, to be able to wait for this call, and then make the call literally on the lap after Alonso made the wrong call. So that way he knew it was the right call. It was just the way it all worked for them, the way it all panned out for them. It was a perfect sort of execution in that sense. So, not without a couple of bumps along the way, but I think, like you said, it was you'd be hard pressed to find a driver that didn't slide or hit the wall or have some kind of moment in that race. So, if you want to you probably know more about the midfield. I was so engrossed in the top battle, but you probably followed a bit
No,
more
I
in the
know.
midfield.
And I just want to say credit to Ocon,
Yep.
who, as I say, didn't luck into it as much as it was Monaco. He also had to drive well in the wet. He had to keep the cars behind.
Yep.
Almost everyone behind him changed positions and ended up all sorts of different places.
Yep.
But he kept his head down, worked with his team, made the safe calls, and scored a podium in one of the most complicated Monacos we've had in a long time. So fully deserved. Same I'd say for Alonso. Again, I guess he had the benefit of pulling out such a gap over Ocon, which is credit to him. Yes, he's still in a good car, but he still has to build that gap.
Yep.
To then almost, they make a mistake. He's done the work where it actually didn't matter. He still got out ahead. So still credit to him as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so... But everything else going on, I mean, all we can say is that the Ferraris were here and there, and then they made horrible calls thinking, we're not going to put on new drives, we're going to stay out in the old ones, and they both went ice skating together off the track, so they threw away any chance of a podium.
Do we want to talk about the signs?
Sainz sympathy corner. We're going back. It's 2022, 2021 again. Sainz sympathy corner. He was, behind Ocon the whole time, going, we've got to time these pits right. We've got to do it right so we can undercut him. I think they tried to overcut rather than undercut, or was it the other way around?
I don't know. They tried to call him to the pits about 7 times, I feel like.
Yes.
And they're like, no, stay out.
They had dummy calls.
Box,
yes.
Stay out. Box, stay out.
And then they finally boxed, and he came out behind him, and he was all like, like, what have you done? I don't know. You should have done this. And they're just like, just keep your head down, buddy. All right. Sorry, we'll figure it out, right? Yeah. And then, the rains came out, and he just went, oh, I don't care. I'm just going to fall down from 4th anyway and slide off the track and everything. So, yeah, somehow we see almost echoes of last year where Hamilton and Russell managed to climb their way back up there. We had the classic Russell going, I'm quicker, let me by. It's like, buddy, it's like wet as hell. We don't think you're going to get 30 even if you let by Hamilton here. And we're not going to ask you to close up to him to prove you can pass because it's wet. Yep. Let's just calm down here. Yep. So he's going to shoot his shot. I guess you could argue his pace, Russell's pace, was actually quite strong compared to Hamilton's, but really they'd kind of, that's all they needed there. And I think even Russell, if I remember, looking at the interval, actually fell behind anyway. I don't remember if he...
No, he had the 5-second penalty. So that was what...
His interval still ended up 17 behind Hamilton, though.
Okay.
So I don't remember if he had... No, because he went off, because then he rejoined in front of everyone's favourite Mexican. The rejoin, which we missed. We were like, penalty front safe rejoin in the pits. And then we see him slide off and slide back in front of Sergio, and you went, oh, and that's where he lost it. So he didn't need to go by Hamilton. Turned out to be the right choice by Mercedes. There you go. Yes. And that was just one of Sergio's great adventures, of course. Starting from the back around Monaco, as we saw with Leclerc from the past, it's really hard to make some moves. He did kind of... It was interesting because lap 1 at the hairpin, there was like bumper cars, which is surprising you don't see more often. There was Hulkenberg sending it like a missile down the inside, I think almost by accident.
That was a Forza type move,
out the
that
way.
one. Yeah. Unbelievable.
Full lock and somehow doesn't smash someone into the barrier. Yeah. And then there's calamity in the chicane with people bumping and smashing and going all sorts, which is more what you see online rather than IRL. They normally make it through okay. So a lot of drivers came in, I think, to replace wings, and because they just said, let's try run the hard to the end, because you get some clean air you can run. That's what Checo did. Checo then caught up to the back of, I think it was Stroll almost instantly, but then so did, I think it was Zhao and others that also boxed. So it was kind of like that didn't matter. And then there was the Sergeant train, the Great American Express, that was holding people up, and he was holding them up so bad that actually people found their way past him because he was going that tentative and slow. So... I mean, yes, we knew the Williams wouldn't be strong, and yes, Sargent's probably like, what am I doing here? This is probably the worst car to drive around here. Help me. So he kind of did well where there was a bit of fighting, but he let them through. And then Checo tried to get his arms out. He sent a move on, I think it was Stroll, which was basically go around the outside and overshoot the chicane and tell him that you pushed him off. And it's like, oh, you pushed me off. No. And then later on, it was like, oh, he gave the place back. No, he didn't. He crashed into the back of Hulkenberg, and then Stroll got by him.
Yeah.
Hulkenberg tripped up on the curb, same chicane out of the tunnel. He had a little bit of rear wheel spin, and Checo just crashed him, called it a brake check, which, okay, I'm not...
Yeah.
I know sometimes we say, oh, they're a bit angry in the moment, you can't blame them, but I think that's a little bit like, come on, mate, we understand you're frustrated, you don't need to be calling out. He's not brake checking you at the chicane,
No.
what do you think he's doing? And Stroll got back by, so it was like... He avoided a penalty he would have gotten anyway, so okay.
That's what we call, like, divine justice, is what happened there, yeah.
Perfect. As Alonso would call it, karma.
Yeah, karma. Yeah, definitely.
Yes. And then kind of a few other jostling. As I said, there was actually some nice moves on Sargent from a few drivers, to be fair. But really then the kind of wet weather came out, and then it was just survival of the fittest, right? People trying not to die. We saw Stroll just suffer out there, lose his wings, smack into walls. He said, right, that's enough for me. Magnussen was out there for 50 laps, still in the dries for whatever reason.
Thought that was odd, yes. Yeah.
Unless they still were coping, saying the rain's about to stop. He was still, like, 10 laps later, we went... Who's out there on the hards? It's Magnussen. Like, what do you mean? What? He's in last. What?
Yeah.
So and then weird. I don't remember if he retired because I think he put on wets and then crashed. So then they had to retire him.
Yeah, he was technically classified.
He was on the hards.
But, yeah.
I think he was on the hards about to box and he just skidded into the wall before the pit lane because he just had nothing. And I think they got him back out there, but I think the car was just basically done. So they said, let's just park it. It's not worth going on.
Yeah.
And if I recall correctly, let me just quickly look this up.
Well, while you're looking that up, I just wanted to bring a comment back from a comment that maybe I'd like to forget, but I'm going to bring it back because it's funnier, recalling it. Back in the preview when we said we made a jovial, funny comment that there's no way we'd ever pick Nick De Vries for P13. Why would we ever do that? And then he goes and gets P12 in the qualifying and the race. So fuck me, I guess. Yeah, you know what?
P12, a fair effort from him. Yes, the car looks strong, but fair effort.
Yeah, and Tsunoda looked really strong until his brakes decided to.
That's
not
what I was
exist.
trying to look up. Yes, I forgot that he was running. I think it was P9,
basically
with
the points,
McLaren's behind. Of course, the McLaren's running okay with that livery that I still don't understand what it's supposed to be other than a cigarette. I don't know what it's supposed to look like.
It was like the tri livery of like their something.
Yeah, I saw some explanation. I'm like, no, it just looks like a cigarette. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Yeah, so Yuki was running decent, and then he was apparently having brake problems. And sometimes we hear drivers going, "Oh, brakes going a bit flat," and they just, it's just like a heat thing or whatever. But he was basically saying, no, this is really bad. And his team in the rain were like, no, push. And he's like,
are you trying to kill me?
You need to take this serious. Yes, you were trying to kill me was the classic Yuki quote.
We're trying to crash me, was it? Yeah.
Yes. And then as it turns out, it was a big problem because he really did fall back quite fast from there, which was a shame because he deserved that. He, as much as we've given him crap previously, and as at the start of this year, we kind of went, look, it's kind of make or break, but is he really going to make? He's kind of showing, that he can do something in a car. As we said, it's pretty poor, especially around Monaco. You need to have your wits about you. And up until that point, even in the rain, he was doing fine. And it's just a shame that his car let him down. It's gutting. He's kind of like, the sad story of the race. It's like he
definitely deserves better than that, I think. Yeah, definitely. But what that did mean was that you had two McLarens in the points. I know it's literally the two last points scoring positions, but
which was the same as Miami, I think, right?
Yeah. Wait, no, Miami was the one where they were really weak, weren't they? What was the one before? Or was that Baku? It was Baku where they were really
before
weak?
That Baku.
Yeah.
No, it was Miami.
Miami, they were weak, and Baku, they got the I don't know. They're all over the place. But maybe they can more, consistently be in the points a bit more. But yeah, another good drive from Oscar, even though Lando had the pace over Piastri. I think to be only one position behind him. I think Piastri was one of the ones that was on the hards and then pitted straight to the intermediates. I think Lando had to pit twice. So I think that maybe that changes things a little bit, but you know what? he's doing well enough, particularly on a track like Monaco, in conditions as tricky as they were.
Yeah,
I think
to
he's done
survive
quite well.
is a credit in itself.
Yeah.
And he barely missed out on Q3 as well. He
Yes,
was
yep.
Piastri was P11 and he was only like 2 thousandths behind his teammate, which you say around Monaco is a very fair effort.
Yeah,
You know, if
literally
Ricardo had
nothing,
done
yeah.
that, you would have gone good job.
Yep.
But you know,
Yeah,
so
yeah, exactly. So
he's doing all right.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, I don't know. There's not much else to say except for the fact that it was just an incredible race, and I thoroughly enjoyed all of that. I guess we can talk about. I don't know if we if you did any research, but we'll go on to our favorite. Roll the intro. Yeah, the FIA technical difficulties. I did have one thing, unless if you had something you want to talk about. It's not F1.
No, I couldn't. Yes, I couldn't see anything with F1. I mean, all they really had to do was call things safely, like red flags and that. I mean, we said going into the race they made that decision on double yellows. I didn't see any. I saw some stages where there were double yellows, and I didn't hear anything in terms of drivers abusing it or such. I mean, it's Monaco, so if there is double yellows in a slower section, it's pretty safe anyway. But no, I couldn't recall, and I did have a look and couldn't see anything, you know, really, really extreme. Aside from seeing cars hanging from cranes in the middle of the air, but that's normal. That's not something I'm saying is bad.
No, I think that's
the only thing extreme there.
So that was F1. I noted was relatively okay.
Yes.
F2, however, there is a moment that I want to.
Yeah,
you know that moment.
I read a tiny bit about it, but I haven't seen it, so I'll let you cover it.
Right.
I don't know what's FIA. I don't know what's driver, but you go for it.
I think it's. I mean, it's the only thing I could really bring up because I think it's probably a bit of both.
Yep.
I think for those who don't watch the F2, which by the way, you really should. It's fantastic. Probably wasn't quite as good as F1 this weekend, but it was still entertaining. But Jack Doohan had an off up at I don't know the corner names. After the first turn up and sort of around before you get to the real slow fiddly bit. And
Casino, I think is what
Casino,
they call it.
yeah,
left-hander at least anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, so he had an off there after having damage, and his car basically went straight into the wall, and he was perpendicular with the track, so he covered more than half the track. I want to say in an already tight circuit, and they decide let's throw some double waved yellows for a while they put marshals on track, and the car's on fire, and it's all this. I think they did eventually throw a safety car. It took them a while before they eventually threw a red flag. Not before we had, and this is during the double yellows, but it was it Victor Martins? I think it was
yes, it was a blue car.
Yeah, so he was coming through, and he admittedly he wasn't going full speed. He had slowed down. We saw his onboard. He wasn't going full pace. But he came around the corner, and it is a little bit blind, comes around, still at quite high speed, and very, very close to hitting Doohan's car, which is stranded on the track, and marshals that are all around it as well.
Yes.
And he gets a drive-through penalty for it, which I think, I guess fair enough, given that, you said about the double-waved yellow rules that came into F1. I don't know.
Which I imagine filters down, yeah.
I assume it would, but... maybe that's why he got the drive-through penalty. Maybe they're trying to make a big stance on it, and maybe that's what they would have done regardless. But I think, you know what, fair enough, that's fine. He probably should have been going quite a bit slower through there, given it's a blind corner as well, and given he knows there's double yellows, he would know there's a car on track somewhere. So fine, I would blame him for that. The one other thing I would bring to that is why didn't they throw the red flag earlier, knowing that more than half the track was covered, and there was almost a certainty that they would have to get marshals on the track, which they ended up having to.
Yes.
And they obviously ended up having to do the barrier repair, and they always red flag when they have to do debris cleanup. It was pretty obvious very quickly that they had to do that. And I feel like if they had just thrown the red flag straight away, this could have just been, the whole thing could have been avoided. But they just did what they normally do, and they try and
Well, you say normally do. They've almost had a trend of being overly safe.
Well, that's what I mean. What they would normally do as of last year. Like, this is the problem. Is like, I thought they were going to be consistent from now on. It's like, okay, we're going safe, fine. Throw the red flag. If they had thrown the red flag immediately, fine, because they're being consistent. You know, with what, you know, things have happened in, you know, previously this year and what they've set out to achieve in terms of, you know, being more safe. But they kind of went back to their old ways of being like, oh no, we'll just see how it plays out. Oh, you know, we can clear that pretty quickly. Oh no, we can get away with doing safety car, but which they ended up throwing the red flag anyway, and we almost had a big accident under double waved yellows because they just didn't throw the red flag, which I saw that, like, even before they threw the safety car, I'm like, this is red flag. It has to be red flag. And then they didn't, and I'm just like, where's the red flag?
Yeah.
Why are they not throwing the red flag? This is so, like, textbook red flag. And it just seemed, yeah, I don't know. Just seems like typical FIA things to do again. So
I know. The thing is, I guess there's two things, right? If there was a matter of urgency where they had to get drivers out there immediately, because as you say, if I haven't seen it yet, depends how big the fire was. If it was suddenly a big fire, then yes,
it was engulfing the entire car basically, or like the whole back
so
of
then
the
you
car,
do need to get people out there. In that case, because it's a blind corner, you would say red flag immediately, so then everyone slows down. Even if it was a case where the car wasn't in immediate danger, but still a car lying sideways, or, you know, and that, who knows what's going to happen, considering it's across most of the track. What you would do before you throw any marshal out there is at least do safety car, because the idea of that is then you know that the cars are controlled, the safety car can slow them down heavily through that area, and you know where all the cars are. If it's just double yellow, although cars could be moving slow, they're still all over the place. Well, the safety car, you know, once it passes through, there's like a minute and a half or 2 minutes for the marshals to move around before, if they have to, they can move off again, right? That's often where we see it used. If a car had been gone off down a runoff road and crashed, then maybe you have a double wave yellow, because if marshals are there, it's down an escape road. The likelihood of a car who already has to slow down then going off on an escape road is so minimal that yes, that's the purpose of it. You could completely eliminate risk, but then every single little touch of a car, you're throwing a red flag, right? It's not perfect.
I think escape road is definitely a different story, but like when,
especially in something like dry conditions or whatever, right? Then you say, something like that you could do. Or in the case where if you know, like a little piece of something has fallen off on the road to the side of the road right near a marshal stand, they might throw a temporary double yellow,
or even
when they know there's like a when they know there's a 10 second gap to have a marshal out there, in case the marshal doesn't get back in time, and then they say there's a double yellow, you've got to slow down. But that marshal will only go out there if it's kind of, they know they've got so much time for him to get out there and get back. They're not going to, you know, cut it clean or whatever. Or they'll do the VSC or the safety car if they consider, look, it's on the racing line and we need to clean it up.
There's no gap.
There's going to be a puncture. So, yes, there's an urgency to get the marshals out there, but because it's a blind corner, yes, you have the double to slow them down, but that almost instantly should be, as you say, a safety car or a red flag or whatever slows the cars down the most. Because yes, you have a red flag, cars could still be coming through there before there's a period in the first sector where they could still be live on the track. They don't all stop, they don't all turn around and go back to the pits, they still have to go around. But a red and the yellows there will say seriously slow down. The engineers can also get on to say slow down, whereas if it's still yellow only in that area, cars can still moving quick. Engineers might not have the info in time to say this is what's going on. When, you know, a red or at least a safety car, there's more time to neutralize, to get information to the teams.
Well, I think red flag's important as well, because the second there's a red flag, there's no urgency to be like, oh, I need to keep up the delta, or I need to get back to the pits. I need to take advantage of
to make a strategy call or something.
Exactly.
Red says neutralize. This is the order.
Red flag is like there's no urgency to get around the track, so you can slow down, you can start to cool everything down, you can save those tires, you can do all that. So there's more. It's more about that just slows the pack down, because it's beneficial to every party to do that. So I think that's. I think it was a misstep from the FIA to make the call so late for the red flag. Which once you watch it, it was still a good race. You'll watch it and you'll understand where I'm coming from, saying they should have thrown the red flag immediately. it seemed very.
And they'll review it
very-
anytime they
yeah.
have a close incident like that. Of course, they'll have to review it.
Yeah, so I'm just glad we have an FIA shittery to talk about this week. Unlike
Well, I'm
last
just
week,
glad no one was hurt as well.
Also
So
that,
yes,
yeah, I mean,
an FIA shooter when no one is hurt is the best kind.
Yes, yeah. I won't do the funny intro with the goof music if someone actually gets hurt. That's
yes,
very insensitive. But when
Yes.
it's them being a bunch of clowns and everyone's okay and happy, then you know what? I'm gonna shit on you.
Yeah, it seems like a cross motorsport. I won't go on too much of a tangent. This has been a good
Is
long
this
episode.
Indy? You're gonna talk about Indy now?
In IndyCar, there was a scary accident right near the end. I don't remember the car's colors. I don't remember their names right off the top of my head.
Fake motorsport fan.
There was quite a
Fake motorsport fan.
It was I think it was Rosenquist was the car that went off. Felix Rosenquist, and I don't remember who the other one was. He was a guy in a pink car, I believe. I didn't recognize the driver.
I don't even watch it, so.
But Rosenquist had just been passed. He had some dirty air. He slid right into the wall, which happens. That's one of the dangers of racing at Indy, and the walls are so close.
Yep.
His steering arm was broken, so he came back on the track. He then tried to keep it on the infield, but unfortunately he spun and came back out. A car going full speed barely didn't avoid him, and he clipped the car's back tire. Those cars have tire tethers, but that tire went up and it went flying.
Ooh.
As you saw it live, it looked like that tire flying very quickly was heading straight for the stands, and it cut off before you saw what happened. And there was a few people on Twitter going, "What happened?"
Jesus.
And when they went back, they verified it was fine. No one was hurt. The tire went up, and it had actually luckily just clipped the edge of the catch fence. That meant it flew higher than it realistically would have. Otherwise, it probably would have just gone towards the edge of kind of the grandstand there. Instead, it kind of flew over it in between two grandstands and actually ended up landing and bouncing between, I think it was like a golf buggy and a parked car or something, and kind of did a bit of damage there, but no one was hurt, thankfully.
Bloody hell.
And it's really hard with Indy, right? Because unless you build a cage over the course, those speeds and everything, they do have decent tire tethers. It's rare a tire goes off. It's just that a car hit full force and in a way that it sheared that tether. So fortunately, it meant that actually the barrier where it was actually probably did save a spectator's life or serious injury, just through a bit of luck. But that, of course, will raise another investigation. But it was still another kind of scary thing, and I'm not blaming the officials or anything. I'm not going to be, someone saying this is always an issue. But
that seems very freak accident sort of stuff. That sounds like something you'd have in bloody Final Destination. I'm pretty sure it did happen in a Final Destination. Almost that exact scenario. That would have been scary.
Okay. Yes. And if you didn't watch it though, you should watch the Indy 500 because it was also
I heard very good things.
So,
good
find a way
weekend
to
of
watch
motorsport in general, by the sounds of it. So. But yeah, that's Monaco. We got a very quick turnaround. We're going to Spain. I think that one will be interesting because we haven't done testing there this year for, I think, the first time.
No testing, and a lot of teams that brought upgrades to Monaco will actually be able to put them to the test now.
Yeah, and even more teams just bringing big updates to Spain as well. So we'll try and cover them if that news becomes available by the time we record that one. But again, thanks everyone for listening or watching to this one. A little bit of a longer one, but it was so much to talk about. I feel like this time, which is not normally what you'd say for Monaco, but we were blessed with this one. But thanks for sticking with us with our upload schedule, which has been all over the place. I said it last video as well, but we got to try and get back on track and get them out a little bit earlier so people can actually enjoy them. I know a lot of people, I'm pretty sure our Miami debrief still has basically no views, but and I know people actually like watching them, so we'll try and do better to get them out a little bit earlier so people can actually enjoy the podcasts. Yeah, we'll see you in a couple of days for the Spain Barcelona preview. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for listening. Take care.
Ciao.